every series of Doctor Who sees old writers return to write new episodes. Obviously the head writer Stephen Moffat writes a few episodes every year, and then we also see other writers such as Mark Gatiss and Toby Whitehouse return and write new episodes and create more interesting ideas with new types of stories. And with Series 8 around the corner, it's likely that we're going to see quite a few returning writers to write for the Capaldi era. And so I decided I'm going to count down my top five writers I'd like to see return in the Capaldi era. Now, just to explain to explain the list, I'm counting writers that have written for the show since the beginning of the revival of Series 1 with Christopher Eccleston. Now it's guaranteed that Stephen Moffat will return, obviously, and they've also confirmed Phil Ford to return, and it's very likely, since he's good friends with Moffat and he writes Sherlock with him, that Mark Gatiss will return also. So those three will not be on the list because it's pretty much confirmed that they already will be writing for Capaldi. But everyone else is pretty much up for grabs. So here's my list. So number 5 on my list is Neil Cross, who wrote the episodes in Series 7 recently, The Rings of Arca-10 and Hyde. And whilst I know that The Rings of Arca-10 isn't exactly a fan favourite, Hyde is a pretty well-regarded episode, and I personally really like both episodes. I think they're both good episodes that, Hyde especially, a great kind of character studies of the Doctor, kind of like how he sees the human race and, what his fears are and how, kind of how everything seems insignificant to him. And, in his episodes Clara, which, this is quite rare, was actually written pretty well, with a strong characterization, which is not found in other episodes of Series 7. I'm sorry to say. But Neil Cross definitely gets her character right down, so if he was to return to Series 8, we could be guaranteed that he'd write a good Clara story again. He's great at writing dialogue, just listen to the Doctor's speech in The Rings of Arca-10. It's fantastic, it's brilliant. So many great quotable lines in that speech. It's one of the best speeches of Matt Smith's Doctor, which is saying a lot because he's the speech doctor. He does a lot of speeches. Hyde, whilst I think Hyde was hyped up a bit too much as being a scary episode, as they always do. Whenever there's a supposedly scary episode, they always hype it up as being, oh, this is the scariest thing you've ever seen in your life, which of course, because they hype it up so much, it never is. But, despite not being as scary as they wanted it to be, I thought Hyde was a really very well shot, but, we're talking about the writing here, but a very subtly written, good episode. I know the ending's a bit rushed, like a lot of Series 7, but, I think that's a really good episode. And I think Neil Cross, who's, very popular for writing for Luther and other sort of crime shows like that, I think, just with his first 2 scripts has shown a lot of potential, and I think he's got a good few Doctor Who scripts in him for years to come. Number 4 on my list is Toby Whitehouse, and if you haven't seen my video saying a video about him, he is the writer that I think should take over as showrunner as Doctor Who, and I don't really want to repeat myself because I kind of said in that video why I like his episodes and why I think he's a good writer, so I won't go into too much detail about him, but just overall I think he's a great writer. He's great at writing companions, really good at writing the Doctor. All his episodes are different and unique. He's got great, experience writing Being Human and such. and he's just a really quality writer, and I've been impressed with all of his episodes. Especially, School Reunion, which, is one of my favourite episodes of Series 2, and The God Complex, which is one of my favourite episodes of Series 6. So, yeah, Toby Whitehouse, hope he returns, and hopefully, once Stephen Moffat does, unfortunately decide to step down, which, will happen eventually, I'm hoping he's the one to take over. Yeah, that's about the size of it. Number 3 on my list is the fan favourite Neil Gaiman, who, if you don't know who he is, you really should. He's a great writer. He's written before Doctor Who, he's written a bunch of different acclaimed things, such as the Sandman comics, Coraline, a bunch of stuff, loads of novels, fantasy novels and such, and of course his episode, The Doctor's Wife, is a fan favourite episode, one of my favourites as well. Geniusly written, great characterizations of the Doctor and his companion. Just a classic episode. Nightmare in Silver, less so of a classic. I still think it's an incredibly solid episode, and despite two very annoying characters who feature in the episode, all the characters are well written. I especially like Warwick Davis' character in that. I think Warwick Davis gave a very subtle performance in that, and I thought the script complemented him quite well. And the Cybermen in that episode kind of sort of returned to form after a few miscalculations, I'll say, with the Cybermen beforehand. They'd kind of been mistreated in earlier episodes before then, so he kind of sort of. I kind of wish the Cybermen, got kind of more to say, but very kind of a return to form for the Cybermen, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who would really like to see him return to write for Capaldi. Imagine that, a Neil Gaiman script performed by Capaldi. That would be amazing. I think he said in an interview, Neil Gaiman, that he hasn't really created a new monster yet, like a new really scary monster. Which I thought House was quite creepy. The entity in The Doctor's Wife. But I can kind of see where he's coming from. He hasn't really written written his Weeping Angels yet. So I think if he got to return, he could really do that. And he also hasn't really set an episode that hasn't been set in the future on an alien planet yet. All of his episodes have been set on on an alien planet far in the future. So it'll be kind of interesting to see him write in a different setting. But yeah, I'd just be ecstatic for him to return, and I don't see why not. Number 2 on my list is Paul Cornell, and if you don't know who he is, he wrote Father's Day way back in Series 1, and my favourite episodes of all time, Human Nature and The Family of Blood, in Series 3. And just starting off with Father's Day. Father's Day was... Rose wasn't always the most likeable character in the world, especially in the hands of a lesser writer. But in Father's Day, that is an episode where you can really sympathise and relate to Rose, and you can really appreciate she makes mistakes in that episode, but you can really sort of appreciate why she does make those mistakes. And she's not. The Doctor doesn't just instantly forgive her like he does in other episodes when she cocks up. The Doctor gets angry at her for making those decisions like he should, and the Billie Piper, the script gives Billie Piper a chance to really act her heart out, and she's really good in that episode. And it's really just one of the all-time classics of Series 1. Probably, probably in my top end of the spectrum when it comes to Series 1. I think it's a really solid episode. And I think it's one of those episodes that really validated the show when it came back, as, you know, not just this old kind of, you know, kind of cheap sci-fi thing that, you know, the fans knew it wasn't, but the public kind of saw it out as at that time. It kind of really validated that, you know, it was a serious drama with you know, complex characters, and really sort of, you know, it was a show that sort of, you know, had more to it than just, you know, Monster of the Week sort of thing. And Human Nature and the Family Blood is one of my is my favourite. After much thinking about it, I have decided that it is my favourite story of the entire run of Doctor Who. So of course I have, you know, I must like this writer if he wrote my favourite episode, and this might warrant another video, but it is my favourite episode because it is my favourite episode because it just, I don't know, I think everything about it, from the writing, you know, to the acting, you know, to directing, is just makes a sublime episode. I love the idea of turning the Doctor human and kind of doing a story about this character of John Smith is everything the Doctor is not, but he has something. He can live a life that the Doctor can never live, and it's a beautiful episode. I always love going back and watching it. You know, makes me cry every time. One of David Tennant's best. It is a perfect episode in my opinion, and so you know, and I don't have enough good things to say about it. Now, there has been some, you know, I have read in some places that Russell T Davies, who was the head writer at the time, did have a lot to do with that episode. He apparently he did some rewrites on it. So I don't really know how much of it was Paul Cornwell and how much of it was Russell T Davies. But it is based off a book by Paul Cornell, that he wrote for the Seventh Doctor. So which I haven't read, and I probably should. But I don't know how much was Paul Cornell and how much was Russell T Davies. But, you know, anything to do with that script is amazing. So I'd love to see Paul Cornell return and write another two-parter. I think he'd be great at writing a two-parter in the series. But yeah, that's what I'd love to see him return. And my number one pick of who I would like to see return to write for Peter Capaldi's Doctor is Russell T Davies, the previous head writer of Doctor Who, before Stephen Moffat took over. He wrote series 1 through 4, and his run on the show is one of my favourites. That's where I started watching Doctor Who, in his run, and I thought, you know, and I don't know, you all know who Russell T Davies is. He wrote, you know, great. He wrote all the series finales and series openers. You know, Passing of the Ways. You know, Doomsday. He wrote episodes like Midnight and the Waters of Mars. He you know, before that he wrote dramas like Queer as Folk, and Casanova. And he is one of Britain's great writers. And yeah, and I think it's a crying shame. It would be a crying shame to never see him return for Doctor Who. You know, just because he's not the head writer anymore doesn't mean he can't come back and write an episode, you know, under Stephen Moffat. And I hope, you know, when Stephen Moffat eventually reads, he still writes for the series occasionally. I've read his book, A Writer's Tale, and you can tell that he really got tired. He really got exhausted from being the showrunner, because you know, it was a really exhausting job. But, you know, returning to write an episode, that might be fun without all the responsibility of running the series, and it would seem a shame because, you know, he's written for all the previous Doctor, you know, Christopher Eccleston, David Tennant, and then he also wrote for Matt Smith in the Sarah Jane Adventures episode, The Death of the Doctor. So it would be a shame that, you know, if he's written for the previous 3 Doctors, that he couldn't write for the, you know, for the current Doctor, Peter Capaldi. And, you know, he could write, you know, he's a very versatile writer, so there is a bunch of, you know, who knows what sort of story he'd write? Would he write a, a modern day London setting like he often did, or would he do something more akin to The Waters of Mars or Midnight, sort of a horror story set on an alien planet, or a space station, or would he do a comedic episode like Partners in Crime, or would he do something like or would he do a big adventure story like Planet of the Dead? Would he return? Would he write like the Master, who he wrote quite a few times, or would he create a new villain? The possibilities are endless, and I would be really excited to see him return. He could become. This might be a strange thing to say, but he could become the Stephen Moffat of Stephen Moffat's reign, because what I mean is, Stephen Moffat, when he wrote under Russell T Davies, he wrote, in my opinion, his best scripts under Russell T Davies. He would come in, write one episode for a series, and he would get critical acclaim. He would win BAFTAs, and I would hope that Russell T Davies can come back and do the same. Come back every series and write a really quality episode. Not that he didn't write quality episodes when he was the showrunner, but because he had to write so many episodes, not all of his episodes could be amazing, could be the best episodes ever. Even though a few of them were, well, a lot of them were. So yeah, it would be great to see him return, and I would be ecstatic to see him write for Peter Capaldi, and like I said, the possibilities are endless. But what do you think? Is there any people I've missed out that you would like to see return? I know there are Chris Chibnall and Richard Curtis, among others, that I didn't mention, who came close to making on the list. But who would you like to see return? Please say in the comments section below, and please subscribe. Thank you. I was Iris from Movie Page, and thank you for listening.